Hello guys, how are you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you very much for stopping by. If you've not subscribed to my channel, please kindly do so, for that is the encouragement I got in putting up all this lovely video. In this video, we are going to learn how to draft a full-scale bodice. Full-scale bodice is the bodice that contains the hip. It's useful when you want to sew a blouse. Alright, you can see that I've divided this paper into two in such a way that the other side, which has a zipper allowance, will be the center back, and this other side will be the center front. And I also came down by 1 inch from the edge of my paper. That will serve as the shoulder line. Okay. So these are the measurements we will be needing: the shoulder, chest line, bust point, under bust, bust span, front length, back length, bust circumference, waist circumference, and the hip circumference. The first thing I'm going to be doing here, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2 on my shoulder line at the center front. I'm also going to do the same thing at the center back on the shoulder line. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to mark my neck width and neck depth. I'm using the standard measurement, which is 3 inches by 3 inches. Then for the back neck depth, I'm using 3 inches width and also 3 inches and also 1 inch depth. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to mark in 0.75 inch. That will enable me to connect my neck curve. So I marked in 0.75 inch, then so that I can place my curve very well. So I will do the same thing at the center back. I'm going to mark in 0.75 inward, and I will place my curve like that so that I can connect the curve very well. The next thing I will do is that I will come down by 1 inch from my shoulder point. So that will serve as my shoulder slants. I will do the same thing at the center back, simply coming down by 1 inch from the shoulder point and connect my shoulder slants. So I'm going to mark my chest line. I simply got it by dividing my bust circumference by 6 and adding 1.5. So that gave me 7.5. And I'm going to mark 7.5 all the way. And I'll connect those lines with an horizontal line. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to bring down what I have on my shoulder line. I will bring it down to the chest line. This is to help me connect a straight line from that shoulder point to my chest line. So I'm going to get the midpoint. I'm going to measure my bust point, From my shoulder line, I'm going to measure my bust point. We only need bust point at the center front because that is where we have our bust. After that, I'm going to measure my under bust length. Then I'll connect it like that. That will serve as my under bust line. So next thing I'm going to measure is my front length. Okay, the front length I'm using is 16.5. So that will serve as my waistline. Then from my waistline, I'm going to measure 9 inches downward. That will serve as my hip line. Okay, this 9 inches is not constant for everyone. If it's a person who is not too tall, you can use 8 inches for that person. Okay, so I'm going to measure from the shoulder. I'm going to measure my back length. Okay, that will serve as my waistline at the back. Okay, so my front length and my back length is not the same because I have the bust at the front, which automatically makes the front length higher than the back length. So I'm measuring my hip line from my waistline at the back, simply marking 9 inches downward. Then I'll connect it with an horizontal line like that. That will serve as my hip line. Okay, so you will notice the front and back lengths are not the same. We'll reconcile that later. So I'm measuring what I have, the center of my chest line. Okay, I'm simply getting the center point of that line, and I'll come in by 1/2 inch. I'll also do the same thing. I will get my angle 45 at that point. Okay, so from that angle 45, I'm measuring in 1/2 inch, and at the center back I'm measuring in 0.75 inch. This will enable me connect my armhole curve. So on my chest line, I'm measuring my bust circumference divided by 4, then plus 1 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to connect my armhole curve that way. So simply do what I'm doing. I hope you understand it. So at the center back, I'm going to connect the armhole curve like that. So I'm going to measure my waist circumference divided by 4 on my waistline. I'll add my 1.5 that allowance and 1 inch seam allowance. Then on my hip line, I'm measuring my hip circumference divided by 4, then plus my 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, then on the chest line of my center back, I'm measuring my bust circumference divided by 4 plus 1 inch seam allowance. At the waistline, I'm measuring my waist circumference divided by 4 plus 1 inch seam allowance. So I'm connecting my lines. Okay, I'll also connect my seam allowance. So this will enable me remember that I've added seam allowance. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing at the back. Okay, so don't forget to add your dart allowance at the waistline at the center back. I added 1 inch dart allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do is to measure my bust span divided by 2 at the bust point line, waistline, under bust line, and the hip line. Then I'll connect it like that. You simply measure your bust span divided by 2 at your bust point, under bust, waistline, and connect it like that. I'm doing the same thing at the center back, simply measuring my bust span divided by 2, and I'm connecting that line. That will serve as my dart line. So on my waistline, I'm taking in 0.75 inches on each side of the dart line, and from the bust point, I'm coming down by 1 inch. Then at the hip line, I'm coming upward by 2 inches. Okay, that is where our dart will stop. Then I'm connecting it like that. So I'm going to take in the 1 inch dart allowance I added at the back, simply marking 1/2 inch on each side. At the hip line, I also come up by 2 inches. Then at the chest line I came down by 1 inch, then I'll connect it like that. You can notice that the back and the front are not equal. That is the difference between the front length and the back length. So we are going to reconcile it by adding our bust dart. So the difference between your front length and your bust length, that will be the amount of bust dart you are marking. Okay, so you can say I mark the bust dart below my bust point and I connect it like that. Okay, so the difference between my front length and my back length is 2 inches, and that is what I marked as my bust dart. So I'm going to eliminate the back bulge like that, simply marking 1 inch inward from the waistline, and what I have from my neck depth of the back and to the chest line, I'm going to divide it by 2. So I'm simply getting the center points, then I'll connect it that way. Okay, so I got the center point of my neck depth at the back to the chest line, and I connect it to that point, and I'm also connecting it to the hip line like that. So that 1 inch that we take away from the center back at the waistline, I'm going to put it back, because if I don't, it will shorten my waist measurement. Okay, I'm simply adding my zipper allowance back. Okay, you can see what I'm doing, then I'll connect it like that. So we are going to cut out that part. Okay, so that way we won't have a zipper bulge again. So I'm going to add 1/2 inch seam allowance all round. Okay, I love adding my seam allowances on my paper. So for us if you want to have a beautiful curve at the hem of your dress, you are simply going to come up by 2 inch from your side seam and connect it like that. Okay, so that is what I'm simply doing there. So I'm going to separate the front and back so that I can be able to reconcile the side seam. Okay, so I'm adding my seam allowances like that before separating the front and back. I love adding my seam allowances before cutting out. So I'm adding 1/2 inch seam allowances on the neckline, shoulder line, and on the armhole. So I'm doing the same thing at the center back too. Alright, so I'm going to separate the center front and back so that I will be able to reconcile the side seam. You can see the side seam of the center back and center front are not equal. So I'm going to separate it so that I will be able to fold my bust dart. So once I fold the bust dart, you can see that both side seam will be equal. Okay, I hope you are understanding it. If you have any question, kindly drop it on the comment section. I will attend to that. Okay. So now I'm going to transfer the bust that's on my shoulder. Okay, because for me to be able to fold it, I will have to open up somewhere. Okay, it's either I open up the shoulder or I open up the waist, but I'm going to open up the shoulder so that I can transfer the bust that day. Okay, so you simply get the midpoint of your shoulder and draw a straight line from that point to the bust point. Okay, so I'm going to draw a straight line from that midpoint to the bust point. Then I'll have to open up that place so that I can transfer my bust that's there. Okay, so if I don't open it up, I won't be able to fold my bust that. Okay, so I'm going to fold my bust that like that, and I will tape it down. So when you fold it, you notice that the lines are not systematic again. The lines are not symmetric, so I'm going to make it symmetric. I'm going to make it equal. So I'm going to tape it down. So guys, are you seeing what I'm saying? Once you fold in the bust that, the side seam will be equal. So I like folding in my bust that before cutting out the remaining paper that I didn't use. Okay, this will enable me reconcile any differences at that side seam once I fold my bust that. Okay, so I'm cutting off the remaining excesses we are not needing. So I'm doing the same thing at the center back. I hope you understand this video very well. If you have any question, don't hesitate to drop it in the comment section. I will attend to it. Right, so we have our full scale bodies. So you can see we have equal side seam now. That is because I fold my bust that. Okay, so guys, this is our full scale bodies, guys. We will be needing these bodies when we will want to do a tutorial on blouse. Okay, so when you hear about full scale bodies, it's just a body that contains the hip. Okay, so guys, we've come to the end of this tutorial. If you've not subscribed to my channel, please kindly do so. It will really mean a lot to me, guys. Thank you very much. I will see